Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is April 23rd, 2024, and South Carolina's spring practices, spring ball, whatever you want to call it. It has come to an end as we now look ahead to the 2024 season. Believe it or not, we are, just under 19 weeks away, but who's counting, till the Gamecocks kick off their first game of the season at home at Williams-Brice Stadium, August 31st, against Old Dominion. We have a great show for you guys today. We're going to break down some thoughts from Saturday's spring game. If you're a subscriber to Gamecock Central, you may have seen some of the players that I thought stood out. We'll hear Intern Joe's thoughts in a little bit. In addition to that, big picture stuff. What's going on with this Gamecock program? When we look ahead to this upcoming year, what are some things that maybe we want to see more of? Again, it's just a spring game, but it's talking season. So get ready for these next 3 months of talking. We'll have plenty to talk about, that's for sure. In addition to that, around the 2:30 mark, we're going to be joined by Stephen Panis. Stephen is the father of the late Jake Panis. For those of you who aren't aware, over the last couple of years, they have created a scholarship, a walk-on scholarship in Jake's memory for South Carolina football. We've seen it over the last couple of years. It's been tremendous. This will be the 3rd year upcoming, but today in Columbia, if you're in the area, I highly recommend going to check this out. Steven's actually going to be doing a book signing for his new book called Walk On. And it talks about the challenges of a father and a family and everything that they've had to navigate through after losing their son, Jake, a few years back to a senseless DUI accident, and how they've been able to do what they can to keep Jake's spirit alive throughout this unimaginable journey, and especially with the help of South Carolina football. So we'll be joined by him in a little bit. That book signing, which I'll mention again throughout the show, 6 to 8 tonight. 6 to 8 tonight at All Good Books. That's located at 734 Hardin Street in Columbia, South Carolina. I'll drop that in the comment section shortly. But All Good Books, Hardin Street, Columbia, South Carolina. Stephen will be there, remembering his son Jake and everything else. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for Gamecock fans to be able to get to know him, because we've seen a lot, whether it be videos. Justin King has shared videos. Coach Beamer has shared videos and tweets about the Panis family. Incredible person. So highly recommend checking him out if you have the chance to do so tonight. But we'll hear from him in a little bit. All right, Joe. Having said all that, we got some people hopping on in. Good to see. Travis Edwards. What's up, GC Live fan? What's up, Travis? Big Red says, Sellers look good on Saturday. I'm sure we'll get there in a little bit. And Oscar Attaway Jr. says, let's go. Oscar Attaway III had a good showing the other night as well. I'm sure we'll talk about him as well. Joe, let's start with you. Couple players, offense, defense. Who stood out to you?
Well, first off, I wanted to say how cool it was. We will be joined by Mr. Panis. I think that's a really cool opportunity to have him on the show. But yeah, into the football talk a little bit. I think Dylan Stewart stood out to me the most. I think, looks a lot more ready than we thought initially thought. I think there's a chance that he sees some reps come game 1, right? I thought it was going to be, we'd see him, right? But did I think he was going to be as ready as he looked, in the spring game? Absolutely not. He looks a lot more ready to go than I personally thought he would at this time, and a lot more ready than freshmen look at this time too. But he's different, as we've been led to believe and been told this whole time. So starting to see why now, and why he's putting his nose in there for potentially being first guy on the bench at the defensive end or even starting. So I think long way to go with Dylan Stewart, but certainly I think he was I don't know if you can call it a surprise, but how far along he's come. He looks apart. Like I said, his rushes look good. His pass rush moves look good. So overall, I think, and that's kind of the tune a lot of people are taking out of the spring game. Dylan Stewart looks, really ready to go. But other than that, Mike, last Tuesday, you asked me to, pick one player to look for, and I brought up Dante Reno. Dante came back.
You gave me a grocery list. It's like you going to the casino and just putting in your chips on every number at the blackjack table. If you were going to hit at least one player or two.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's terrible. I'm getting better at it though. Whenever I'm on a show and somebody asks me to give them one player, I try to keep it to one or two. But we brought up Reno last week, and we'll get to him as well for sure.
Let's start with Dylan Stewart. Because, and we'll get to Lenore Sellers. I mean, many people bringing him up, and rightfully so. I mean, there's no question from an offensive standpoint, and probably from a game standpoint, simply because that's your most important position as the quarterback, especially trying to replace a guy like Spencer Rattler. So I think the thing with Dylan Stewart, and you mentioned just how ready he looks for a true freshman, and not just a true freshman, but a guy that should still be in friggin' high school right now. He should be in his second semester, I don't know, depending on different states and quarters, trimester, whatever the heck they would call it, where he went to high school. But I think the thing with Stewart that just stood out to me was it wasn't just what he was doing as a pass rusher. He was causing problems in the run game as well, causing disruption. It reminded me a lot about another player who really stood out to me defensively in different ways, right? I'm not saying the way they play is the same, because it certainly isn't. But to me, the guy that stood out the most defensively was Brian Thomas Jr. We go back to last spring, and to me, it felt like that was his coming out party in a sense. He just absolutely balled out, and it carried over into the 2023 season. Now, he played in all 12 games last season at edge, started in 6 of them, finished with about 20-something tackles, had a couple sacks, forced fumble, a couple TFLs. So I think he may have 1 sack, but a couple TFLs. I bring that up because you look at Dylan Stewart, we already knew. We already knew heading into this spring how much hype is around this young man. We heard it earlier in the week, too, just how confident he is. He's a soft-spoken person, but he's confident in himself. He talked about it, I'm paraphrasing, but earlier in the week, leading up to the spring game, he mentioned that one of the goals he has, 2 of the goals, one, he wants to be an All-American, a freshman All-American. But number 2, he wants to break the program record set by Jadeveon Clowney for sacks in a season by a freshman, and that was 8 back in 2011. So, first off, bold to say that. Bold, but you can see why. It's not just he understands what he has to do. Again, this is a spring game, just like with all these players that we're going to talk about. It's talking season. We're going to have fun with it. We're going to have at it. But I think more than anything, what we're going to see from Stewart is he's certainly going to put pressure on those other guys. I think the challenging part is this. You look at that edge room. You look at between the experience they've been able to bring in, or the players that have already been here, like a Brian Thomas, or even a guy like Desmond Umeozulu. They have a lot of talented guys in there. There's no question about it. They have a lot of talented guys. And like we've talked about before, Joe, not just at the edge position, but defensive tackle as well. They want to do those hockey shifts, as they've talked about. I think it was Sterling Lucas that mentioned that. That would be in a perfect world. And when you look at what they were able to get from the other night, on top of the reports that we've heard throughout the spring and some of the things that we've been able to see in spring as well during those 14 other practices, you can see why they're as high as they are on that front, with that front. And even going back a little bit to that front 6, depending on the personnel matchups, when you have the 3 down linemen, 3-3-5, guys coming off the edge, different packages from a defensive standpoint schematically. But this defense, I think we will see a lot of guys get a lot of reps. How much Dylan Stewart plays right off the bat, I don't know. But I think if he's able to go out there, I certainly think he'll be a guy that'll be playing 12 games. As long as he stays healthy, he'll certainly be a guy that gets out there and plays in all 12 games. But the question now becomes, how quickly does he get out there? And I mean, shoot, Brian Thomas, he's going to be one of your starters. There's no question about that. Brian Thomas is going to be one of your starters. Is Dylan Stewart ready to be a starter? I'm not ready to say that he's ready to be a starter right now, and that's all right. He's a friggin' freshman. But at the same time, too, would it surprise me with the way that this season potentially goes that he starts a game or two? No, that wouldn't surprise me at all. But again, talking season, have at it. Enjoy it. Enjoy all these little things that we can talk about, getting a little too amped up, geeked up about some players. But, man, he did good things, man. There's no question about that.
Yeah, Mike, I agree with everything that you said there. I think, Coach Lucas has, his hands full with such a deep room this year. I think this is the first time, and Boomer talked about this a little bit too, but this is the first time that the defensive line has looked the part throughout the room, right? Like, no matter who you're subbing in there, you have guys look the part, and that also, are starting to play the part too. Dylan Stewart starting is a really good question, because I don't think it happens week one, but I think you see quite a bit of him in there in week one. Like you mentioned, Mike, like Sterling Lucas said, at some point in spring football, is they want it to be these hockey shifts, right? And if they're telling their guys that means that they're comfortable with the amount of depth that they have, and the guys that are in that room that can play on the SEC level. Because, I mean, as well as I do, rushing the passer is almost the most important thing a defense can do. In
You
the
need it.
SEC,
I don't care. We've talked about it.
Yeah.
And I've been a broken record
exactly.
about this. I don't care who the heck you have in the secondary. You can have all Americans across the board. If you're not putting pressure on the quarterback at some point, just because the way football is, and I'm always going to side with my fellow defensive backs, being a former one, at some point, guys are going to get open. I mean, it's inevitable. So you have to be able to put pressure on the quarterback. We saw that last year. Think of those first couple games outside of maybe the Furman game. Mississippi State, it started to really pick up, but USC struggled to get after the quarterback. And because of that, at some point, it doesn't matter if the guy's back there, for 10 seconds. At some point, guys are going to get open. So being able to put more pressure on will not only help USC's defense out as a whole, but it'll really help those guys in the back end. They'll be able to stay a little bit more rested too, right? They have depth at that safety position. When you think about DQ Smith, Nick Eamon-Worry, Jelon Kilgore, and certainly they're continuing to look for more depth in that room. But on top of it, you look at what's going on in that cornerback room. And let's talk about that too. We'll stay on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Judge Collier, banged up, was dealing with a lower body injury. That led to Vakari Swain playing practically the entire game. If he played every snap, then, for the black team, then, but nearly every snap. And he was very impressive. And I thought some of the things he mentioned after the game, specifically talking about, if I'm in a situation where I need to play the entire game, now I have a better sense of it. It's a spring game, but at the same time, too, he has a better idea. Yeah, I mean, these guys play high school. That's great. This is a totally different game. Your body responds differently. You're going to be more tired. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, there's few players that can go both ways in college. Few. And I think being able to go out there, did what he did from a defensive standpoint, playing the entire game practically at corner, comes up with the interception. That was certainly the highlight of the night for him. But he also came up. I thought his run fits looked good. I thought from a coverage standpoint, he has a better understanding of what he's doing. We talk about this, more so from an offensive standpoint, but he understands the why. It's not just, okay, you're playing this coverage, you're playing man-to-man, you're playing cover 3, you're playing cover 2, you're playing cover 4. He understands why he's doing it. And when you understand the why, you're able to go out there and you're not having to think as much. You're able just to react, especially at that position. So that interception he had on Reno, he talked about how he was actually in man coverage and he recognized something and he baited Reno into making that throw. And that's why he was able to go up, make the athletic interception, high pointing it and everything. So with Vakari, I think the big thing going into that game, even if Judge Collier did play at all, his big thing was trying to earn more trust from that coaching staff. I think he certainly did that the other night. And regardless of how that competition plays out, because I think a lot of us assume O.D. Fortune will be the starting corner on one side, and it's a battle between Judge Collier and Vakari Swain, I still give the edge right now to Collier simply because he started in 2 games last year, has more experience, limited. But I think Vakari certainly put more pressure on. And if anything, we've talked about this, Joe, you're looking for at least 3 corners you can trust. At least. You'd love to have 4. But Vakari doing what he did the other night, you should feel better about that cornerback room.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agreed fully. I think Vakari Swain is certainly playing really, really good. O.D. Fortune's a lockdown corner from the jump. the comments here. Martin makes a good point here. I was questioning why USC didn't get a transfer corner, but now I applaud and appreciate Torian Gray for trusting guys he recruited and developed out of high school like Vicari, Emery, and Judge. Absolutely. Hitting the nail on the head there, Martin. Because again, yeah, it's Torian Gray trusting his guys, right? Trusting the guys, players that he recruited. And, I mean, you're seeing it in the defensive end room now too. We already brought up Dylan Stewart and Sterling Lucas. That bond is ridiculous too. So I mean, it's starting to take effect across the board, right? What you're seeing with the DBs and the rest of that. But no, I agree. I applaud Torrey for trusting his guns, because he has two dogs competing for that second quarter spot right now.
And let's just be honest, right? Does that mean South Carolina wouldn't take a corner if there's a good proven one out there in the portal? No, it doesn't mean that anything's a lock right now, right? You're going to do whatever you can to help your team. But at the same time, too, and this was talked about throughout the spring, I don't remember if it was Clayton White that said it this past week or if it was Shane Beamer at some point. I mean, there were so many media availabilities this spring. Shout out to South Carolina giving us as many as they did. Certainly, that's not something that we're as accustomed to. I mean, since Beamer's got there, there's been more. But point being is, you can see why after that, and we didn't even get to see Judge Collier. And not only that, but I believe David Spalding was held back. I don't think he played in the game. So you got Spalding, you have Emery Floyd, and another player, too, who I'm interested to see. He's a freshman. He'll be a freshman, is Jalewis Solomon. Solomon will be coming in during the fall, and he's very athletic. He's someone that played both ways in high school, very athletic wide receiver, but he's a ball hawk defensively. And I think just having that young presence in that room and someone just lengthy and likes to hit, I think it's going to – but that's the big thing. They're developing – look, last year was rough. Last year was rough in a lot of spots defensively, a lot of spots, whether it be from a depth standpoint, whether it be from an inexperienced standpoint. But just look at the difference. Again, just the spring game, but look at the difference from what we saw defensively last year to what we saw the other night. And I think the other thing too, Joe, is we didn't even see them dial up a lot of their crazy blitz packages, or really from a defensive standpoint. I think Beamer even mentioned it, just because they were banged up at some spots still. From a defensive standpoint, they actually had to play different personnel packages that they won't even play during the season. So it's actually going to be an advantage, because some teams are going to be studying South Carolina playing, I'd have to go back and see exactly what they were doing. I don't know if there were situations where they were playing, a 3-5. I don't know what they were doing, but they were banged up a little bit. And yet still you were able to see the things that we've been talking about this spring, that this is a team, especially off the edge. They have speed, they have speed and size. And what I think will really help this team is being able to have more confidence, feeling better about yourself, about the performance that Vicari had. Nick Eamon statistically, nothing crazy, but he also had a nice job out there wearing that new number 7 jersey. But you have that confidence in the back, shoot, you should be feeling great about up front. You should be feeling great about the front 7, front 6, whatever the heck they decide to play in. But you have that confidence back there, and you already feel good up front. And this isn't me saying South Carolina is going to have one of the best defenses in the country. But certainly what I believe they can do is be a team that causes a lot of more problems and forces more turnovers, something that they did during the first 2 seasons when Shane Beamer arrived. We've already seen that happen. You add this in now, man, I think they could be really special defensively.
Oh, yeah, Mike. A lot of good points there. I'm glad you brought up Jalewis Solomon. I think that kid is going to be special too. And that's another, I don't think they really go into the portal for another cornerback, because, again, they've got another dog coming in. And I could see Jalewis Solomon playing towards the end of the year. I think coming in late certainly hurts his cause. But, again, we've heard that this kid is just a freak athletically. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact he makes. But, yeah, Mike, I mean, I'm really, really excited about this defense this year. Mostly because, I mean, what we saw Saturday was obviously, different formations, kind of vanilla, more like a chocolate ice cream if we're talking on the flip side to what Dowell was saying, but I still showed a lot of the
line brand
you have on this defense. And so you it still showed a lot of athleticism, and it excites people because, again, you have a pass rush now. You have depth at the defensive tackle position, the defense position. So now your ball hawks, your linebackers too, which led by Debo Williams, a known crazy man. He said it himself. And that guy's bringing out, linebackers like Wendell Gregory, right? I think that's a lot, should give fans a lot more optimism too. But, it's starting to look like, and again, knock on, that it's starting to look like the whole package defensively. Everything is starting to line up for Clayton White. He has all of his pieces, in the defensive backfield, just dogs that can go get the ball, go knock out the ball, go make tackles, and then also rush too if you need. So it's really looking on the defensive end, especially because, all that depth you have up front. I mean, it really, really goes a long way. And then, same story as always, right, Mike? The defensive backfield, just a bunch of dogs scattered and competing for a lot of, playing time.
So a couple of things as we keep moving along, we're going to try to talk about the offensive side quickly before Stephen Panis hops on with us. So one question, let's see, where is it? Gavin S. Any leads on Carolina pursuing anyone in the portal? It's one of those things, Gavin. I think as the week plays out, we will start to hear more rumbles. And the reason I say that is South Carolina is having their exit meetings right now. They started them yesterday. They're supposed to start around 7:15 a.m. Shane Beamer meeting with every player. Typically, those meetings are going to last for 15 minutes each. So you do the math out. That should wrap up on Wednesday. It could wrap up even on Thursday, depending on how quickly these meetings go. Beamer is going to be doing the welcome home tour. He's going to be, I'm trying to think. It's actually, I don't know if it's at Seawells tomorrow night, somewhere in this area. Maybe one of you guys know. I know West is going to be covering that. So going to be honest with you, I have no idea where that is tomorrow night. But point being is, as far as this goes, the portal, I think they'll have a better idea. Now, Beamer has mentioned, I think it was actually last Tuesday, that from a scholarship standpoint, they would like to have more depth at wide receiver, and they would like to have more depth at offensive line. Again, that's from a scholarship standpoint. Does that mean that will happen? No. Does that mean they can't go out into another position and bring someone in? Certainly not. I think we've heard from the past from Shane, and he's talked about it. It's not just about the talent, it's about the fit. And when you look at some of these positions, I think from an edge standpoint, all right, South Carolina is good there. Now, if there's a can't miss kid, that's one thing. But do I expect them to get anyone from the edge? No. Offensive line, I could see that. I could certainly see wide receiver. And I really wouldn't be surprised about corner still. I know that sounds hypocritical based on everything we just talked about with Vakari Swain, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a veteran corner out there. Again, I like what Vakari did the other day. I think Judge Collier is going to bring a lot to the table. I still have him penciled in as my week one starter across from O.D. Fortune, but man, Vakari Swain certainly putting some pressure on him with his performance the other night. You bring experience in, I get it, or at least experience in the sense of pushing. So that's one thing. I think the other thing too, let's see. We have the other question that we had was, let's see. Here's the other question that we had. Oh, so was it more of a statement? Jay Diz, Swain looks like that South Carolina cocky corner I'm used to. Thing about Swain is he comes across very soft-spoken, but I think he's gaining more confidence just in general. And when you have confidence, it's going to show. It's going to show. We're going to talk about the offensive side in a little bit, but now we're joined by Stephen Panis, someone that, shoot, Stephen, it's crazy. I've got to know you now for almost 3 years. Very grateful to have you on here today to talk about your new book, Walk On. Kind of talked about you a little bit before we had you on, but for those of you who are just hopping on now, Stephen is someone who has gone through a lot. Him and his family has gone through a lot. The Gamecock community, some of you may already recognize Stephen. For those of you who don't know, a couple of years back, in a senseless DUI accident, Stephen and his family, they lost their son, Jake, but they've been able to keep his memory alive by doing multiple things. But a big thing here in Columbia that I think a lot of Gamecock fans have started to learn more of over the last couple of years, especially the last year or two, is the Stephen Panis walk-on scholarship that they've done. And it's been absolutely incredible. Stephen recently wrote a book called Walk On. He's been doing a tour. He's a superstar right now. But the big thing about it is he's sharing his story. He's sharing his family's story, and not just sharing about the unimaginable journey that he's had to go through and his family's going to go through, but what they've done to keep the memory of their son Jake alive. And they'll be doing a book signing tonight. Mentioned it a little bit earlier, but for those of you who missed it, head on over to All Good Books. That's located at 734 Hardin Street, right here in Columbia, from 6 to 8. Head on over there, get yourself a copy. Going to be a tremendous book. I've already been reading all the reviews, Stephen. I'm going to have to head on over there, grab myself a copy tonight. But why don't you just take it away, because I know this is something that's near and dear to you and your family.
Thanks, Mike and Joe, for having me on. First off, it's great to be on with you guys, and I appreciate all the support for the Jake Panis Scholarship. The support of Gamecock Nation, it's been amazing over the last 3.5 years. It's really lifted me up and my family at a time when we were certainly knocked down and needed to be lifted up. So, yeah, we're having a book opening or a book event tonight at All Good Books, and it's free to the public. It's come on out. The book's for sale, signing it, and the proceeds are going to support the scholarship.
There you go. And it's been really neat. I talk about the scholarship. This is something over the last couple of years. You talk about walk-ons, right? We talk about, obviously, the stars. We know Spencer Rattler. We know the Xavier Legettes. We know these, but there's so many tremendous players that don't have that opportunity of having a scholarship. And I thought when you came, I remember talking to you about this a couple of years back when this idea came about. I thought it was just absolutely tremendous, because not only is it helping out a young man at South Carolina, you've been able to help out two over the last 2 years. I think it was Peyton Mangrum last year.
Three total. Matthew Bailey.
Three total now. I'm losing track. I mean, shoot, this is going to be on year 4 now, for crying out loud. But yeah. I think what's really neat is not only are you making a difference in the Gamecock community, making a difference for a young man who's playing football at South Carolina, but it truly is keeping Jake's memory and his legacy alive. Because I know you go up to South Carolina, you'll speak to the team. What are some of the things that you tell them about Jake?
I tell them that how much Jake wanted to attend this university, and that was his dream. And that as his father, I felt a responsibility to make sure that Jake got there some way, somehow. And thankfully, Coach Beamer was incredibly open and receptive to the idea when I presented to him, which it didn't surprise me. He was a walk-on himself at Virginia Tech, so he totally got it and embraced it. And the university's embraced it, athletic department, and it's been fantastic. Yeah, so Matthew Bailey was the first recipient in 2021. He's now actually playing in Toledo, long snapper there. And then Peyton Mangrum was year 2, great kid, really smart young man with a bright future. And then last year was King Dominion Ford, another terrific young man. And the idea was that they would represent a lot of the qualities that Jake exhibited, which was leadership on and off the field, grit, toughness, really care about their community. And that's both their team and then their greater community here in Columbia or wherever they're from, because humanity is about being more, not having more. And it's just been great to see the kids when they get the scholarships. They're incredibly joyful and grateful, and they understand the responsibility that comes with it. And they now carry that baton forward in their life.
Yeah, Stephen, I did have another question for you. Obviously, Coach Beamer, it's a little bit of a follow-up question here, but you guys are really involved with this scholarship and in this program, and you guys really get to meet the kids and really make a positive impact on them. How much does that mean to you guys to be able to spread the word about your son and really make sure that scholarship lives on in his memory?
Yeah, Joe, great question. It means a lot. For me, it means a lot. I stay in touch with all of these scholarship winners. I text them a lot. I want to know how they're doing in school, how they're doing on the team, how they're doing in life. In some ways, it's a way for me to father more kids like Jake, accomplished student athletes who really want to get the most out of life. And that's very meaningful. And they ask questions about Jake and what was he like. And it just keeps Jake's legacy of lifting up others and spreading joy alive. And for a bereaved father, that's really important. And I couldn't be more grateful to Coach Beamer. Like I said, he's just been fantastic. His wife, Emily, Just great people who really understand and connect with humanity.
So I talked about it a little bit with the book, and I definitely didn't do it justice, I'm sure, because there's just so much great stuff in there. Just try to scratch the surface. What can people expect when they open up this book and they read Walk On?
The biggest thing I try to tell people is, because I've gotten this a lot, like, well, I don't want to read a book about grief. It's too sad. It certainly touches on that, but our vulnerability is our strength. And the book is a lot more hopeful and inspiring than it is sad. And it's for anyone that's dealing with any kind of adversity, a struggle in their life, a financial crisis, a failed marriage or relationship, a poor medical diagnosis. Grief is just one form of adversity. So there's a lot of lessons, and the lessons are that all the answers are within us. We tend to look outside for the answers, but the answers reside within us. We have to mine them and source them and apply them to our lives. And we don't control a lot on this planet, but what we do control, it's all right here. And that's our happiness. That's our work ethic. That's our enthusiasm, our joy, our kindness. There's just so much that if we focus on that, you actually simplify your life, and you can become the best version of yourself.
So this book signing tonight in Columbia, I know you've done a couple already. What has been just the reception from some of these people when they come up? I know some of them have been able to get to know your story. They've been, I mean, shoot, I remember we were out to eat at one of the Carolina Calls show when Shane Beamer had his Carolina Calls show, and people just coming up and just how moved they are from everything that you've done and being able to use something that no one would wish on their worst enemy, and yet you've been able to find a way to turn it into a positive in some shape, way, or form. What has those conversations been like, Stephen?
They've been great. You know, the reality is that we're all wearing invisible backpacks, and we all have our own thing that we suffer. And so it's relatable. You know, people come up and share their story, and we all have a story. And I think the more we can talk about it and share it and realize that we relate on that, and that we're not alone, because often we feel alone in our circumstances, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to, share that story with someone, and you realize, oh my God, they're going through something too, and I can benefit from maybe something that he or she said. So it's just been one of those connecting things, and it's been very powerful, and I feed off of it. Actually, you know, I really want to connect with more people and help more people. That's really what has kind of come out of this for me in the process of healing. I realized if I'm going to do Jake's life justice, I got to carry on the attributes that he lived out.
Joe, I think your microphone is muted.
Oh, yep. Sorry. I apologize, Mr. Panis. I got one more for you. So obviously we're talking about support, and obviously for the good cause. There are a few that do it as well as Gamecock Nation. How special is it to be able to, feel the support from this fan base, and how does this fan base separate themselves from everyone else?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all how Gamecock Nation rallied for us, and I love it in Columbia, South Carolina. I had a great 4 years here in 87 and 91. I come back almost every year now, multiple times. It's just a special place with special people, and their level of wanting to help and lifting one another. It just speaks to the community, right? That we're all in it together, and we're all rooting for the best for every Gamecock team that participates, and for all the student athletes and the students. And it just shows you how strong of a community it is.
So I want to share this. I know this is from just last year, but for those of you who may not have seen it, some of you probably have, but this is just last year when they announced the Stephen Panis scholarship recipient. Make sure I pop this up the right way so we can hear the audio, but this is the announcement. Pretty cool video. I mean, Justin King does an incredible job. So
He's the best.
He's awesome. So let's see. We will share this one. Make sure I get this the right way. All right. This is just last year.
Good. Nice job right there. Came forward, and that ball had gotten thrown back across. He must be there to make medical, correct? I thought so. That's why you are now on scholarship.
What? Told you were coming, fam. Thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus. Let's go. Thank you. Thank you.
You continue to get better.
Hey, Pops.
That's what it's all about.
Okay, I got you now. What you say?
Hey, I'll be able to pay you back for school.
What you mean?
They put me on scholarship today.
Wow. Yes.
Yes, sir. It's a middle walkthrough. I was not ready at all. Like, it was crazy.
Stephen, seeing that, what kind of feelings does it just give you?
Joy. It's I think it speaks for itself, and that's what it's all about. I mean, just the jubilation, not just in King Ford, but in his teammates celebrating for him. It's the best. And I see when I look at King and when I saw Peyton get his and Matthew Bailey, I see Jake in their face, just that youthful exuberance, the hard work that paid off. It's a sweet feeling, and it really does a lot for me each time I'm there when we announce the new recipient.
Oscar Attaway Jr., the father of Oscar Way III, new running back, saying, "Losing a child is hard, sir. I buried my daughter back in September. One of the hardest things me and my family has ever done. Oscar coming to South Carolina helped me with dealing with the situation." Oscar, appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, God bless him. I'm sorry for your loss, sir.
Stephen, before I let you get going, just final thoughts on what would you just tell people, whether it be coming out tonight. I know people have donated. They can go to the website, and I'll have all the links. If anyone's looking for the links, this will be a free story on Gamecock Central. I'll have that up tomorrow morning. What would you tell people, though, especially because, again, not only are you helping a Gamecock student athlete pursue their dream, but you're also keeping the dream of your son, Jake, alive?
Yeah, I tell people that if you're down and out and you need help, make sure you ask for it. Reach out to somebody, and that the quality of your mindset ultimately architects the quality of your life. So think positively, be enthusiastic, live one day at a time, and don't take anyone or anything in your life for granted.
Again, walk on tonight. Head on over to the All Good Books.
Thank you, Mr. Panis.
734 Hardin Street between 6 and 8 tonight. Go get that book. You're doing a lot more than just supporting Gamecock athletics. You're keeping the memory of Jake Panis alive. Stephen, thank you so much for hopping on. I'll be over there tonight at some point. I'll shoot you a text. Looking forward to catching up with you as always.
Thanks a lot, Mike
Can't
and
wait to
Joe.
read it this summer.
Go Cox.
All right. Stephen Panis once again joining us today. Awesome stuff. Always love talking.
Really looking forward to reading the book this summer.
And Oscar, I appreciate you sharing that. That was something none of us were aware of. So appreciate you sharing that with us, and sorry for your loss as well. We'll get on over there. We'll have a story up tomorrow morning on Gamecock Central. It's been something. I'll tell you what, I think a lot of Gamecock fans have been able to get to know the Panis family through what's gone on with his scholarship foundation. Just an awesome guy. Awesome guy, just an incredible person. Like I said, I've known him for about 3 years now, and it's gonna be special to be able to go see him because he's very, very appreciative. What you saw right there from Stephen, that's how he is away from the cameras. Just an incredible person. It's been awesome to see. I think he was actually on Jim Rome either yesterday or going back to late last week. I mean, he's been doing a monster tour, and again, what's great is it's benefiting a Gamecock student athlete, but it's helping keep the memory of his son, Stephen's son, Jake, alive. And that was his dream. Jake's dream was to go play for the Gamecocks. Well, you know what? Unfortunately, that dream was never able to happen. because of a senseless DUI accident. But you know what? Because of the drive from his father, Stephen, on top of the incredible support from Gamecock Nation each and every year for the last 3 years, going on 4 now, Jake has been part of the Gamecock family. He's been part of that Gamecock football team through this scholarship. So I would highly, 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 highly recommend heading on over there if you have a chance, again, to go check him out tonight. Once again, I'll say the address, 734 Hardin Street. That is in Columbia, South Carolina. All good books tonight between 6 and 8 o'clock. Free to go. Maybe you just want to go up and just shake his hand. Maybe maybe you're not getting the book, but you just want to go introduce yourself. But again, proceeds will be benefiting a walk-on scholarship in Jake's name for Gamecock football for this upcoming season. Having said that, and it's tough to transition. Man, it is tough to transition from there. We're going to do the best we can. Let's talk about Oscar. Let's talk about the running backs, because I felt like Oscar Attaway, and I wrote a story about it yesterday on Gamecock Central. If you hadn't had a chance, head on over to Gamecock Central. If you're not a subscriber too, you don't need to be a subscriber for this story, but if you're not a subscriber, sign up today. $1 for your first month. Highly recommend it, because especially over these next couple of weeks, transfer portal, right? I mean, you're seeing it happen across college football. Maybe you're interested in knowing what's going on just in the landscape of college football, not just South Carolina. We have you covered on 3, plus basketball portal, baseball season, women's basketball, everything. We have you covered on Gamecock Central. But talked about this the other day on GC, that running back room as a whole, yes, it was banged up heading into the game. We knew that, right? Rocket Sanders coming back from his injury. Juju McDowell got dinged up a little bit, re-aggravated his shoulder, or collarbone, sat out the rest of spring. So it really led to a tremendous opportunity for someone like Oscar Attaway in the running backs in that room. And I think the big thing that I took from his performance and listening to what he had to say after the game, very versatile. All right, we can get caught up on, 12 yards, right? But again, this is a preseason game. This is a glorified practice. You're not playing 15-minute quarters. Clock's running, so you don't have that many opportunities. 12 yards rushing, yes, but to go along with 2 catches for 14 yards, and he also contribute in pass protection. And one thing that we talked about specifically about Attaway when he joined South Carolina was his versatility. He showed that he's capable of playing on any down. I thought he had a tremendous night. I thought DJ Braswell, another player that we've been talking about a lot that I felt like just got overlooked naturally because of the additions they brought in via the transfer portal, like a guy like Attaway, like a guy like Rocket Sanders, and someone like Howell. I thought Braswell stepped up. I thought he was a guy that I would have liked to have seen him hit the hole a little bit harder a year ago, just be more downhill. Man, he was hitting that friggin' hole hard from a standpoint where South Carolina didn't have any negative rushing yards. None when he touched the ball. Yep. So, Oscar Attaway, DJ Braswell, there was, and I want to make sure, too, I don't overlook some of the walk-ons who balled out. Shout out to Sumter's own Nathan Harris-Waynick. He made the most out of his opportunities. It was cool to see him out there. And we also had Larry Scott, Nathan Harris-Waynick, they rushed for 49 yards combined on 10 carries. Thought they did some good things. But Braswell, 26 yards on 5 carries. Again, all positive yards anytime he touched the ball. Just a good night overall from that running back room from what we saw in that limited action.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And, I wanted to echo it. I know we were kind of off the topic, but I appreciate Mr. Panis coming on. I'm a big mental health advocate myself, having been through some things. So just hearing all of that talk was wonderful. And Mr. Attaway, appreciate you sharing, your story on here and comfortable to share it with us. We appreciate it. I'm all for all mental health and stuff like that. Having fought a couple bouts myself, so I really, really appreciate that segment and all of that. But Oscar Attaway, the third, balled out, and he's caught my eye since the second I turned on his tape. And the second we kind of heard that he was transferring to South Carolina, kind of a do-it-all running back. Proved that in the spring game, right? Has really, really good size, good speed out in the open field. a difference maker in a room, right? And if you can get him going, right, get him in a rhythm, I think he's really going to make a difference. Again, his North Texas film speaks for itself. I mean, he's running circles around people out there, and he's also going through the hole. He's big. Can do it all as a back. And when you have a room that has so many different faces in it, like Rocket Sanders, Juju McDowell, DJ Braswell as well, Oscar is going to be the guy that you need to, kind of do everything, right? Be able to go in the hole, be able to break it to the outside. So I was really impressed. I've always been impressed. Like I said, as soon as I flipped on this kid's tape, I was excited about the fact that he was coming to South Carolina. So I think he's going to make a real difference at this in this running back room. And then too, from a competition standpoint, I think it's really good. It's going to be really, really good come summer. And once you add Rocket and Juju back into the mix, it's going to produce some dogs. We're going to see again. I was impressed. And then Jawar Howell also did a couple good things. That's another kid to keep your eyes on. Just kind of the future of this program, right? I believe he's staying at South Carolina. I don't know how much we'll see him come this fall, but I mean, hey,
that's okay.
It's really about how you practice. Yeah.
We've talked about it.
I mean, they're looking for him. I mean, I don't want to say next year. They're never really looking next year for
a deep running back room. It's a deep running back room. And the beauty about Howell is this. And I don't want people to think I'm writing off Howell, because I think he's going to be an absolute stud. And we got to see that a little bit, not just in the game, but from the practices and what he was able to do in those 14 practices. We've mentioned this before. The spring game, that's great. It's phenomenal. Yeah. But it's about what you did throughout the entire spring. There's some guys that show up when the lights turn on, and that's tremendous. That's what you're looking for. But at the same time, too, that doesn't just dismiss what took place in the other 14 practices. So for him, like a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., Brian Edwards, I'm going through all my draft stuff. Can you tell? Bringing up Brian Edwards' names, a little blast from the past. But I really liked what just some of these guys did, not just in the spring game, but they did the entire spring. And another guy that fits that description is Lenoris Sellers. And we save Lenoris for last, and I'm sure we can mention some other players, but what Lenoris did was exactly what anyone would have hoped for, simply because the expectations, the pressure, the anointment of some having him ready as, okay, he's the next coming already, before he's ever really took a real snap in a game. Yes, he played in 4 games last year. Did he go up against the ones? No. So that's what I'm talking about. Did some great things in the limited action that he was out there for. The point being is to see him take control of that offense, that opening drive in particular. I know he was 9 of 11 throughout the game as a whole, that first half. Didn't really get to see the ball to field really that much in that first quarter outside that opening drive, because other than that, that was the end of the quarter, 12-minute quarters, first and second quarter. But 4 for 4, had over 50 yards combined through the air and on the ground, and also had that rushing touchdown for about, 13, 14 yards, whatever it was. So I think with Sellers, it was the confidence that he showed. It was the ability to be quick with his decision-making in the sense of, okay, pass isn't there. If there's a hole there, I'm going to take off. But at the same time, too, it wasn't just, okay, guy's not there, I'm going to take off. He went through his progressions. And if that second one's not there, third read's not there, then he would take off. There was a hole, he was going to take off. So I think, again, and we talked about Reno earlier, the best play of the night for Reno wasn't even the touchdown pass. The best play of the night for Reno came in his first throw. It was a play-action pass, tight end drag, and it wasn't there. First read's not there. And he worked his way up to the second level, looked at the second progression, and he threw a dime. And he threw a beautiful pass. That was the play that got called back because of illegal man downfield. Now, in the regular season, we'd look at that, and we probably wouldn't be talking about it right now. However, spring game, it's a glorified practice. When Dow Loggins went back and watched that tape, I'm sure he's going to cuss someone out for being downfield, illegal man downfield. However, when you are doing your breakdown from a player, when you're grading out the tape for the players, and they look at that for Reno's going to get checks across the board. I'm just telling you how it works. So him going through that, all right, Reed's not there, work up to my second progression and throw a dime. It was perfect. And for that to be his first throw in college, and I get it, it's a spring game, not a real game, but for that to be his first throw in front of the biggest crowd he's ever played in front of, I mean, goodness, it was beautiful. Yes, he had that interception, but as I mentioned before, I think more of that interception had to do with two things. I think Fakari just being a guy that doesn't look like a sophomore anymore or a redshirt freshman. He looks like a guy that understands what the heck he's doing because he's been working with Torian Gray. And as I mentioned before, he talked about after the game, he baited Reno into making that throw. Reno's a freshman quarterback. He's a guy that should still be in high school right now. Those throws in high school, he was probably able to get away with. Now he sees that. It's like, all right, yeah, might think twice about trying to do that one. But what did he do? Bounced back, made a beautiful throw for a touchdown towards the end of the game. And that's what we're talking about when we're looking at young quarterbacks. Reno's not in the mix right now to start, and that's okay. But what he is doing is he's getting better each day. He's providing that depth. And Robbie Ashford, what I'll say about Ashford is this. Statistically speaking, Joe, people will look at the stat sheet and be like, wait a minute, Ashford only had one completion. You only threw the ball once. The issue with this is, and I know some people are going to roll their eyes, have at it. I don't care. I'm telling you, this is my opinion on it. The issue was Ashford was running around for his life. And one of the reasons why is because before the game even started, Marquis Anderson, his back tightened up, locked up on him. So now you have one of the starting offensive linemen for the black team out, and you find out minutes before the spring game, minutes before the game, and you have to throw someone else out there. So not only do we have a mixed bag, in a sense, there were some starters on one side, some starters on Team Black, right? But now you have Marquis Anderson out there, not out there, in this offensive line where you could have someone in his place who might not have even worked with the guy to the left of him or the guy to the right of him. So I think that showed a little bit. And that was one of the reasons why the black team really wasn't able to generate the push up front they were looking for from a unit standpoint. It's tough to grade it from a individual standpoint. I've gone back. There were some guys that did some good things on the offensive line, but it's tough to grade it out simply because from an outsider standpoint, because you don't know what the responsibilities were for every single person. That's why there's times where guys get beat, or it looks like they're the one that's getting beat, but it wasn't even their responsibility. They were trying to help a guy to the left of them, a guy to the right of them. But those are some of the takeaways I had from the offense. I know I threw a lot at you, Joe. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was certainly impressed with Sellers. I mean, on my show, I talked about the thing that I was most impressed with was his legs, his ability to escape the pocket, his poise in the pocket, right? He kind of knew when to escape. And I think a little bit of, is it more of Sellers' genius, or is it more of him getting chased around at practice? I think it's a little bit of both, right? Because you have scary defensive tackles and scary defensive ends chasing you. And somebody brought up that Lenoris mentioned TJ Sanders as a practice record. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine running for TJ Sanders every day. So, but I was really impressed with the kid's poise. His leadership was on par from everything that we're hearing from inside the building, and everything that a quarterback needs to, the starting quarterback needs to have. So, he looked good. But again, I think you can't really make a decision on your quarterback battle, and I know they're not, right, because it's only a spring and they got plenty of football to make a decision. But Sellers, I mean, played like the favorite only because I think Ashford was running for his life for a little bit. And with Anderson, right, you don't want to let that back become worse. You don't want that to leak into summer. You want him to take as much time as you need. As we know, Mike, I mean, they're gentle giants, right? I mean, especially with the back for some of those big boys, it can be touchy stuff. So I mean, I think with Marquis, you just you heal, and then when it's ready to go to war again, you reactivate him, and he should be good because Marquis is a really, really good offensive lineman when he's healthy. So I want him to be full health, and hopefully he can get this back problem figured out over the summer and over these next couple of weeks and be ready for summer. But I think offensively, Mazio Bennett looked good in flashes. I know obviously we're talking about more of the defense because the defense, I guess, looked better, right? I mean, it's a swing, but I think, Sellers looked good. It was his poise that struck me the most. The wide receiver room still got some development. We didn't really get to see who the dude is, right? Who they're going to be calling deep balls to quite yet, right? Because I know, Dowell Loggins talked about the vanilla ice cream offense, and
there wasn't even any real deep shots down the field.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was the way that it was going to be.
It was vanilla soft serve in the most basic cup you can get with barely a spoon, right? I mean, very, very basic. So I don't know. I think that was the one thing that kind of I was left desiring, if you will, from the spring game. We don't really have any idea of who that number one receiver is going to be. And it wasn't going to be a fair shot anyways, because Nick Harbor's still running for the Olympics, which is still crazy.
Shoot, and Harbor wanted to freaking play in the game. He wanted to pull a Dion back in the day, 93 Atlanta. I think it was 93.
Yeah,
92, 93.
He ran the third fast 200 time in school history and then tries to go play. That's ridiculous. And I mean, I'm sure he could have, right? And not going, don't get hurt. But I mean, the kid is ridiculous. He's still, the fact that he's still going up in track, right, Mike? Because we talk about this too, guys that do both. As soon as they start plateauing, you pull them from one, right? But I mean, this kid continues to do just maddening things on the track. I mean, third fast time in school history. It just keeps going up and up and up. And he still has a chance to qualify for the Olympics this summer, which is ridiculous. It's wild what Harbor can do. But again, I think, and we'll see. I mean, as summer practice rolls on and as I get into summer camp, we'll have more of an idea of what that number one receiver is. But at the spring game, you just really can't tell.
Yeah. So the plan right now, again, meetings are going on, exit interviews with Shane Beamer and his players. Each meeting lasts for about 15 minutes. They started on Monday morning around 7:15 a.m. They will likely last through Wednesday. We will try to get any updates we can on that. I don't expect any surprises via the transfer portal. Would I be shocked to see a player or two hop in the portal, maybe on the back end of the roster? No, I wouldn't be shocked by that. I think that's just the reality that we live in, as my chair just breaks on me. But that's just to give you an idea. Okay, that's there. And then after that, players will come back towards the end of May. They'll start to do their summer workouts here with Luedecke. And then some of these players will be starting up summer classes in June. And then before you know it, those 3 months will fly by and we'll hop right in to fall camp. Couple comments, questions, we'll get to it. And then we'll have some just quick thoughts on the NFL draft. EXO Make says, good point, Mike. Makes me mad when folks count out our QBs while ignoring whether or not other people do their job. A lot of pieces make the offense work. You need to pay attention to what's going on. So one of the issues, and it also kind of answers what Big Red kind of asked. Big Red says, does it help to change out players by the coaches last second to simulate a game injury, learn to work with real adversity in practice? So what Big Red's asking, I'm guessing it's about more so the offensive line, or at least that's the way I'm going to make this point about it. Big picture, yeah, like it, of course it does, right? Next man up mentality. The challenging part is this. With the offensive line, they were already banged up heading into the spring game. So you're already limited, okay? And on top of that, you lose one of your starters who hasn't necessarily been working with every guy that you're on the offensive line with. So now you have that next man up. So I know I hope this makes sense, where it's like, I am a believer in that next man up mentality and being able to have guys ready to work with whoever. It's tough sometimes though, where, you're in a situation where you have a mixed bag already and a guy goes down and now you have to throw someone else out there when you don't have that much depth to begin with. So I think that was one of the issues that they ran into. I will say this though about the offensive line. I get it where people get frustrated. It wasn't just offensive line. There was injuries across the board. I mean, it happens. It's football. I get the frustration when people talk about, okay, wait, why are these injuries continuing to happen? Right? We have to look at this. We have to look at that. I wish it was as simple as that. I really do. If it were one of those things where there was a certain injury that was taking place over and over and over again. For example, even when I was, not to do the old, back in my day story, but back in my day, freshman year of college, there were so many shoulder injuries for my football team. So many. And they reevaluated the program, the workout program, And they realized that some of the stuff we were doing, more of those military press and a lot of it was outdated. And because of what we were doing, you're really compromising your shoulders. And there were multiple shoulder surgeries. Okay, that's one thing where you're able to look at something and you're able to pinpoint, why are there so many shoulder surgeries? Why are there so many shoulder injuries? In this case, with South Carolina, whether it be from the spring, whether it be to even going back to last year, unfortunately, it's not as simple as saying, okay, this is the reason why. So could there be prevention with some of this? I don't want to seem like there's no correlation. Yeah, I'm sure to a degree, whether it be, maybe there's more. I don't want to act like I'm a strength and conditioning coach. There's guys that know what the hell they're talking about when it comes to that. I can only talk about it from a surface standpoint, but certainly there's more you can do from a stretching standpoint. Maybe the way the guys are training, or they overdo. This is all assumptions. I'm not there every day. We're not there every day. We can only go based off of the things that we're told. Now, do they do a lot of things that really push these players? Of course. But you know what, too? College football has really changed. Life has really changed over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, think about it just from a college football standpoint, even high school standpoint. Two-a-days for college, they don't even exist anymore. They don't even exist. You have days off now during fall camp. That wasn't a thing back in the day. So there are more rest periods now more than ever because the NCAA has come in and said, all right, we're gonna crack down and we're gonna cut back here and there. So there are things that are allowing players to have more recovery time, but I don't know. I don't know. I'd like to know the specific reason, but I don't think there is one. And I think that's the frustrating part about it. It's like, I wish there was one thing we can look at and be like, all right, this is the reason why this is happening. Beamer talked about in the offseason. He was asked this point blank. Is that something you need to look at? If it was that easy to look at and be like, this is the reason why it's happening, you don't think a change would happen already? Of course it would have. It's his ass on the line. Why would he do that? So I don't think it's as simple as that, but we'll see. I like some of the things that Luedecke has been able to do, especially when you look at some of the guys. We talk about SEC size. I feel like we've heard that so much. These guys don't look like SEC play. You look at the defensive line the other day, my goodness. Linebackers, my goodness. Some of those guys, you could tell they put on some size. My goodness. All right, Joe. Having said all that, I do want to throw this too out. I think someone asked me about a quick question about Steve Ellis said, did we even throw a ball over 15 yards? I think the closest I saw, or at least the one that I remember, there may have been, was the Mazio Bennett diving catch. And that was Ashford's only throw attempt of the game.
Crazy.
Beautiful catch by Mazio. Limited from a statistical standpoint, but I thought Mazio Bennett did some good things. Tyson Russell had a nice catch. But watching those two guys, even Jared Brown, they did some nice things from their route running standpoint. And again, when you look at the black team in particular, difficult for anyone, whether it be Robbie Ashford or some of the, I think, what was it? Davis Bevel came on in for the black team. Difficult when you're under duress as much as they were. So that's just my thoughts on that. Joe, let's hit a quick ad read. Then we're going to come out of the other room. We're going to talk about the NFL draft a little bit to wrap things up.
Yeah, my tax ID is an uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through a loan. Tax team, Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for your refund, call in the tax team at Liberty Tax. They're fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood. Open 9 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. Give a call to upload your tax documents. From when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call off screen right now. And for those listening, 803-462-5576. Once again, 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs this tax season.
And today's show is also brought to you by a good friend, Clint Hammond of Movement Mortgage. If you're in the process of looking for a home, trying to find the lowest rate on the market, do exactly what our very own Wes Mitchell did, as well as former Gamecock quarterback and captain Perry Orth. They called Clint Hammond over at Movement Mortgage. Longtime supporter of not just Gamecock Central, but all of these GC Live shows. Give them a call, 803-771-6933. All right, a couple final thoughts. Big Red, I'll get to your question next week about the tablet communication. They started using it a little bit the other day, but it's something that certainly I'd like to get into much more than just kind of hitting on it on the surface of it. Big Red talks about Spencer Rattler, possibly a late first-round pick. I don't see it. All right, so
Not yet.
on Thursday, we see all these mock drafts. We see all these draft experts every year for the last, 2, 3, this is the third year, whatever it is. I do a Gamecock NFL draft guide. It's everything that you really need to know on these guys, as far as what the scouts are saying, as far as what I've been able to compile from talking to scouts. Sometimes I talk with agents. Sometimes I'm talking to teams, depending on my connection. When I say teams, of course, I'm not talking about the head coach and the GM like some of these bigwigs. But point being is I'm giving you guys what's going on as far as these Gamecock players are concerned, as well as some of the thoughts, too, from talking with these players over the last couple weeks. We're going to have some interviews, too. We have one tomorrow that'll be coming out. I don't want to announce who that player is simply because, you throw something out when you haven't even taped the interview yet. You jinx it, and then it's just like, wait a minute, Mike, you said this one was coming out. So be on the lookout for that one tomorrow as well. But having said that, a couple thoughts as we get ready for this NFL draft. Xavier Luedecke, I'm expecting him to be the first Gamecock off the board, either a late first-round pick, early second-round pick. He's a guy, of course, with his speed, size. We know everything. I don't want to give my whole guide away either here, too. But he'll be the first one. He'll be the first one. As far as Spencer Rattler goes, based on the conversations that I continue to have with people either in his camp or people that have been scouting him, fourth round looks like it's going to be. Could be a late third-round pick, but I have him right now pegged as either a late third-round, fourth-round pick. And as I've said before, I think regardless of where Spencer goes, he's going to be a steal. He's going to be a steal simply because he is a guy that is battle-tested. Battle-tested in the sense of the offensive line being as banged up as it was last year. He was under a lot of duress. And what does he do? He puts together one of the best statistical seasons in Gamecock history. He helps his wide receiver, who heading into last season had less than 500 yards in his career receiving, and he goes on to finish second just behind Alshon Jeffrey for most receiving yards in a season. And Rattler, of course, has been blowing people away from the performance he had in the Senior Bowl to what he was able to do at the NFL Combine and the meetings and just everything else in between. So I think between that and the fact that he had an opportunity to work with an offensive coordinator who has experience in the NFL. Dal Logan, 7 years as an offensive coordinator in the NFL. I think he worked, 14, 13 years in the NFL, something like that. Point being is he's a guy that has a lot of experience with coaching in the NFL, and Rattler was able to pick his brain a little bit. And you're able to see, and that's where one thing that I keep being told over and over and over from multiple scouts that I've talked to, it's just like, Mike, this guy, you can tell he understands playing in the NFL because of the way he goes through his progressions. There's some things that you're able to get away with at the college level that you won't be able to do in the NFL. You just won't. Plain and simple. Rattler, he's NFL ready. He's NFL ready. That doesn't mean he is day one NFL starter ready. Let's not get that confused. But I think between what he has already proven, his knowledge, his arm, I don't know if this is a bold statement. I think he's going to have a long career, Joe. I think he's going to have a long career. And I think he's one of those guys, even if it's towards the back end of his career, he'll stick around and he'll be a guy that can provide depth on the roster simply because he has that knowledge. And I think he's going to have a long career. And I think he's going to be a steal wherever he goes. And eventually he'll get his opportunity to compete as a starter in the NFL. And the crazy thing, too, is no Gamecock quarterback has ever been drafted. Some people, if you try to, talk, okay, who do you think? If you ask that question, like, Who's the last Gamecock quarterback to ever be drafted? Some might say Anthony Wright. Anthony Wright went undrafted in 99. He had a nice little NFL career, but no Gamecock quarterback ever been drafted. That changes this week. That will change, I believe, either on Thursday or Friday. Nick Gargiulo, another guy too, I'd say, pay attention to. Buffalo Bills have really liked him. Marcellus Dial, I also think he'll go late in the draft. Another guy too, I'd say, to pay close attention to. Tyreek Johnson. I reported this a couple weeks back. Cincinnati Bengals came out. They had dinner with him at a very popular Hall's steakhouse. Yeah, we'll just call it Hall's Chop House. They were there with them. They had a nice little dinner, and he was very happy. I remember just turning around when he finished up, and I said, that sounded like it went well. I was just eavesdropping on the other side of it. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And, Trey Knox is in the mix there as well. I think one player, Joe, that I do want to bring up too, I know DeCarrion's going to be trying to live out his NFL dreams. Marion Brown is an interesting one. He's been getting some interest from some Canadian teams too because of his speed. But all it takes is one team to look at AB and say, hey, you know what? I like his speed. I feel like this could be a good fit. Similar in a sense with like Jordan Strawn. Jordan Strawn, what I hate for him is that injury really set him back. Like I felt like if he didn't get hurt, he was going to be a middle of the pack draft pick in 2023. I thought he would have been like a 4th, 5th round draft pick. And unfortunately that injury happens. And now you're looking at it as, okay, Strawn could be a 7th round pick, could be an undrafted free agent. The problem with Strawn, it's not just the injury. It's his age as well. Because he was here, I wouldn't say just here, but he was in college for a good bit.
Yeah.
So, shoot, he'll be, if I do the math out right, he'll be 26 in November. He's 25 right now. Doesn't mean it's impossible for a guy to get drafted, So, because we've seen Hayden Hurst was a 1st round pick, different position, different circumstances. But that injury, though, that's one thing. But I think it's the age thing that you got to look at, too. But I hope he has an opportunity because, man, I really thought he was going to have a tremendous 2022 season, then go on and have a great NFL career. Doesn't mean he can't now, just means the path to get there a little bit more bumpy. Any thoughts, though, on these guys before we wrap up? Maybe some of the guys I didn't mention?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know about Turbo Miller obviously signed his contract. I know NFL draft because he was draft eligible last year. But
with the New York Giants a couple weeks ago, tremendous story there. Yep.
Yeah, and Dante's a great person, right? He was great with them when he was. So shout out to Dante. I did want to shout him out for that because I think he probably there's a good chance he makes a team or practice squad somewhere with that kind of stuff. So at least give it a shot. I think. All right. So yeah, I agree. I think Xavier Legette first off the board for South Carolina. Spencer soon to follow. I don't know. I think Marcellus Dial is another guy I think that could make some teams happy. But I think Xavier Legette is going to go a lot higher than people think. I don't think he goes in the 1st round. I think it's somewhere in the 2nd round, probably higher up in the 2nd round to what I would think. Because there's going to be that first crop of wide receivers that's off the board, and in the Odunzes, the Harrison Juniors. I think Xavier Legette is in between that first crop and second crop, because he's better than the rest of them, but he's not quite in that first crop. And I think based on, NFL talent and caliber and, prototypical NFL type players, Xavier Legette is, the best one out of all of them. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. Also that guy too, because his dad is Marvin Harrison, but I think that is going to make some teams very, very happy, or make a team very happy. I could see it being the Panthers, but I don't know. I think there's going to be a team.
Comes down to what happens,
right?
As far as movement, right? There's going to be some trades. It happens every year. If there's a situation, we're hearing a lot right now that the Panthers are very high up on Legette. If it's there, maybe he does go 1st round. But at the same time, too, I think he will not last long if it's day 2. He won't last long. I think he'll be a fairly quick pick in day 2 if that is the case. But again, it comes down to just who has the pick. What are they looking for? It's not always about, all right, hey, Xavier Luedecke, he's first-round talent. This guy's first-round talent. This guy. Sometimes it comes down, especially when you're one of those tweeners, if you want to call it that, between a one round and the other. If he's a tweener here, it comes down to who has that pick. A couple things, too. I mentioned Tyreek Johnson. Pay close attention to the Bengals. I'll have much more deeper analysis for all these players. But one thing I did mention in my Gamecock draft guide, I'd be paying close attention to those late rounds because I think Tyreek, and it depends, again, you read some mock drafts, there's going to be stuff that's a little bit different than I have. What I try to base it on is I try to gather what some of these websites, some of these credible websites are saying, combined with the conversations that I'm having either with the player directly or scouts and teams. And I try to combine all of that because obviously you're not going to be able to get the type of coverage on every single Gamecock player the way that we're going to provide it anywhere else. So with Tyreek, the interesting thing is this. I mentioned the Bengals, and he met with other teams too. The Bengals came in town, had conversation, went out to dinner, all that stuff. They have 4 draft picks. As of right now, again, trades happen. As of right now, they have 4 draft picks between the 6th and 7th round. So 4 picks, okay. We get to that territory. Tyreek's on the board. I wouldn't be shocked to see him go to Cincinnati. Having said that, one of the guys, too, that we mentioned earlier, Nick Gargiulo, the offensive lineman, from everything that I've been told, the Buffalo Bills are very high on him. Now, does that mean he ends up in Buffalo? No, doesn't necessarily mean he'll end up in Buffalo, but you get into those later drafts, later picks of the draft, and that with him, I think he's a guy that's going to go in the 6th round. Very versatile guy. Did a lot when he was at South Carolina. Had to do more. He had to be asked to do more because of all the injuries, but he's someone I think will have a nice little career in the NFL as well. And there's some guys that we haven't talked about. I mean, there were guys last year that, I felt like we're going to be undrafted free agents, and all it takes is that one team to fall in love with you, and guess what happens? Bam. You get drafted. So we'll see how things play out. If you missed any of our show today, boy, it was a doozy. Plenty of it. We had spring game talk in there. Thoughts on that spring game, players who stood out. Stephen Panis joined us. He's getting ready for his book signing tonight. Walk On proceeds will benefit Gamecock football in that Jake Panis scholarship, the Walk On scholarship that they present every summer. And we also talked about the NFL draft a little bit too. So plenty of it. If you missed it, head on over to the Gamecock Central YouTube page where you can watch this show in its entirety. Or if you're a podcast listener, head on over to the Gamecock Podcast Network. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Uva. I'm going to be off Thursday, folks. We'll keep you posted, though, on a show. Intern Joe could be in the seat. We'll see. I'm going to have a talk with him, but we're going to also have some more draft coverage for you guys. I'm not going to, if Joe has to fill in, he's not going to be, the substitute teacher and no one knows what the hell's going on. No. Everything will be good. Plenty of draft talk on Thursday, but definitely look out for the Gamecock draft breakdown. Everything you need, the complete guide, it'll be posted on Thursday morning. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Uva. Appreciate everyone that tuned in today. I will see you next Tuesday. Enjoy the draft this week and enjoy the nice weather here in South Carolina.